The Democrats, but clearly has worked tonight. And this is exactly that was his 2016, and this is the story of tonight.
You know what's interesting to me? Thinking back to the Republican National Convention, we were all sitting there, and Hulk Hogan came and ripped off his shirt, and sort of that moment super masculinity. And one of the conversations that we had was about this, and as its name, so-called, right? The young male and the Trump strategy all along had been supercharge the base, boost that turnout, crank it up big time, get those so-called low propensity voters. Listen, young guys typically don't show up to vote all the time, and they typically don't consistently. I will tell you that the Trump campaign has been feeling good about being able to get low propensity. Those people don't typically vote specifically.
It's so interesting because we heard anecdotally, again, from some of our correspondents about fraternity brothers getting really into voting for Donald Trump. I don't know if it's the bro wall. You know, somehow Donald Trump has low propensity young male voters to come out and vote for him.
It is the hardest demographic American politics for males under 30 to turn out. They're the lowest turning out segment. I've spent hours on your show, you and I talking about running up the numbers of women. You know, the Harris campaign did some of that tonight. The Trump campaign decided let's give her that, and let's go grow our electorate differently. And it looks like tonight
We've got another result of the abortion referenda. Let's go to Laura Jarrett. What do you have, Laura?
Yeah, Lester, this was another ballot measure in Arizona, overwhelmingly by over 62%. That ballot amendment has now passed. Again, this would be a constitutional amendment that would enshrine a right to an abortion up to the point of viability, which is roughly 24 weeks of pregnancy. Obviously, a big difference in this battleground state. Currently, it's a 15-week restriction on the right to abortion. So big difference there. Again, we haven't yet made a projection on the race for president in that state. But again, the ballot amendment we can project has passed.
All right, Laura, thanks very much. Laura, thanks very much.
Interesting on that front. There's also another ballot initiative in Arizona that has to do with immigration. And the thinking was that maybe that would turn out if people were going to turn out based on this abortion ballot initiative, maybe they would also turn out based on the immigration ballot initiative that those would maybe lean Trump. But the Trump campaign has thought that there would be ticket splitters or ballot initiative would back people who woere President Trump in Arizona, but also back this ballot initiative that is Laura reports.
One of the things that I think is so interesting is talking about expanding the amount of voters who came out to vote for Donald Trump. Decision that he made not to campaign with Nikki Haley. A lot of people thought, oh, that's going to be a big misstep. To your point, Jim, it was his way of calculating. I'm going to focus on driving out the mail vote because a lot of people thought, boy, that's a risky strategy. Why wouldn't you have?
But he also never made any overtures to Nikki Haley voters. Nikki Haley dropped out of the race. There was never a sense of here's an olive branch coming to my branch, coming to my town.
People that voted for Nikki Haley states, and I mean that's a real gutsy move to say, you know what, I'm not interested.
But the true answer is he could have done both. Like a good presidential campaign usually in a race where 70-some% of Americans were on the wrong track. This race was really close because Donald Trump couldn't ever grow his vote past these young voters we're talking about. Had he been able to do both, to your point, a million people voted. They were just sitting out there. Nikki on one of your shows this week, no one's called me, no one's asked me, no one's asked. Because they decided, to your point, they were going to go jack up low propensity white males, and it may have worked.
Let's go check in on Michigan, NBC's Jesse Kirsch is in Detroit. Are they still counting into the night there, Jesse?
Yeah, Lester, we're trying to get some clarity. As I mentioned earlier, we would have the tabulation from the city of Detroit around midnight. We have not gotten any confirmation at this point if that has been completed. But I do want to emphasize something that we're seeing coming out of the surrounding areas. Dearborn, Michigan. That is a community that has a large population of Arabs. And what we've been watching for is the potential impact of the war in Gaza, the situation in the Middle East that has been going on for months, and how that might impact the vote here. And we're starting to get some early indicators. At this point, this is not the complete data. Of course, we're still waiting for more folks to come in, including the absentee for Dearborn. When we look at what we know so far, the breakdown we're seeing is former President Trump has 47% of the vote in Dearborn. Vice President Harris has 27% of the vote so far. And third-party candidate, Green Party candidate Jill Stein has 22%. The warning signs around this issue go back to the Democratic
to the overall. It's unbelievable.
Well, you have to consider the fact that a lot of people didn't think that. They thought it was a riot. They thought it was a riot, not an insurrection. But not an insurrection. Had they thought it was an insurrection, I don't think he could have won. I don't think he could have won.
Well, I don't know.
Exaggerations about that day.
I'm not exaggerating.
Democracy is a piece of what happened tonight.
Well, I don't think so. I don't think so. Again, I'm giving you my perspective. Right, so I listen to you. But I want to tell you what I saw. And not only in terms of the violence, a direct action intended to stop certification of the presidential election. That's why I said that.
The campaign ran a lot of ads about it, talked a lot about it, and you know, half the country, Juan is going to say, that is not what I care about. I care about my economy, immigration.
That's where I'm not sold on this idea that the cost of eggs. I worry that I'm not voting for this woman. I'm not voting for this black woman. Here's the thing.
My skin deserves unique care. Deep nourishment for dry skin helps reduce the appearance of stretch marks. Nivea is for skin.
Welcome to QNet's world of new beginnings, where every sunrise is a promise of our commitment to you, your health, your dreams, your planet, and your community.
And here's what he said if Trump wins. He said he won because black men felt that Democrats and elites put immigrants before us.
There's 70% of the vote, and too close to call in the western battleground of Nevada. And Tom, let's zero in on what you're seeing there.
Yeah, some interesting things happening in the Silver State. If the trend is your friend in Las Vegas, the trend is your friend if you're a Republican tonight. Here's why. Look, a lot of the vote is still out in Clark County. There's still about 23% of the vote that's out in Clark County. But this margin right here at this point in the night is way too close. This is how Clark County, Vegas ended up 4 years ago. You can see it was almost a 10-point split here. It was a 10-point split there. And now we're talking about 2 percentage points tonight in Clark County. Again, a lot of the vote is out. That vote could come in and those numbers could change. Reno, Washoe County, more reflective of the entire state vote. This is the battleground county. Biden won this in 2020. Tonight, Trump is on top. Still, a lot of the vote is out. He's only on top by about 200 votes, so not much to say there. But what we can point out, in the Trump counties, like Elko County here, 64% in. Trump is overperforming tonight. He was at 76. He's almost at 80% right now. And Democrats aren't going to find votes here. I mean, these numbers aren't going to swing a lot in the Democrats' way. This is Trump country here in the middle of Nevada. Douglas County is another, I should say right down here, Douglas County. This is another Trump barometer that we watch. Again, overperforming. 66% of the vote is in. He was at 63 in 2020. He's now at 66. But the big story for me right now, and a lot of the vote is out. Clark County, I mean, this is 3/4 of Nevada right here. If Democrats hit certain margins where they're 50,000 or 60,000 votes ahead of Republicans will never catch up in Nevada. Again, there's a lot of vote that's still out. We can find out exactly how much is out. 223,000 votes, so still a lot out there. Democrats won't get all of those, but they'll get a large chunk. Again, this is still a little too close this early in the night, guys.
All right, Tom, thanks very much. We'll go out to Steve Patterson. He is in Reno, Nevada, where they had long lines into the night. How are things going there now?
You know, Lester, really an experience, a process that is sort of winding down in most counties across the country is only just spooling up here in Nevada. As you mentioned, you know, voting really ended just a few minutes ago with some of these counties sort of ending the process. People were still in line hours after polls closed. And so the count couldn't really start until that happened, which is why Tom Yamas reporting, obviously, that it's still too close to call, too early to call at this point. Several counties still need returns to come back. It is still very early on in the process. But we saw almost immediately Republicans sort of jumping out to this early ballot lead when it came to turnout. That was sort of the reading on the wall that I think a lot of folks had. And specifically in those counties in which, you know, Tom Yamas was pointing out that are red, they're going to stay red. This sort of map, the math doesn't change in those areas. There's really only 2 population centers in this state, which is Washoe and which is Clark, Vegas and Reno. If she doesn't build up a big enough firewall that we see see these returns happen over the next few hours, then it's going to be very tough for Democrats to make up that ground. I spoke to both campaigns. They both feel like they still have a good shot. Obviously, Democrats and Republicans both aiming for another subgroup here. Nonpartisan voters is a huge segment of the electorate here in Nevada. It is larger than Republicans, larger than Democrats. Of course, they all have their opinions about which way they break, different leanings, and I think both campaigns feel like they're seizing on that. They feel like they know their voters in that group, but that's what makes it so notoriously hard to read in this state. Which way are these nonpartisan voters going? And I think that's sort of what we're going to be focused on within the next few hours. It may not be until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock tonight before we start seeing legitimate, solid returns that'll tell us one way or another how the state is going to go.
All right, Steve, thanks very much.
That's Mountain Time, too, by the way. So even later here on the East Coast, let's go to Garrett Haake. He is at Trump headquarters in West Palm. Any word on whether we will hear from the former president?
We will, Savannah, and soon, I'm told by a campaign official, Donald Trump is on his way across from Mar-a-Lago to here in West Palm Beach, and he is expected to speak soon. Now, what soon means is a little bit of a open to interpretation, but Trump himself made it very clear earlier today, he does not have a lot of patience with this vote counting process. He wants this to be over tonight. He thought earlier today it would be over tonight. And it was his desire to speak tonight. Now you see that picture breaking up a little bit as he makes his way across the bridge to West Palm Beach. This ballroom is full. Secret Service starting to kind of close the doors, urge people to get in. They're cranking up the music, Savannah. I do not think it will be long until we hear from former President Trump.
And that will be an interesting situation because if assuming the status quo exists, he will not have been called as the next president.
Well, we will recall that he declared victory in 2020 when, in fact, he lost. So we'll see what his verbiage is here. What are you going to say?
I was going to say, I've been speaking to some of his allies, and there's sort of this divide about how he should approach this night. And some of them are saying you should be very aggressive. You should get out there and claim victory if, in fact, you think that's where this is headed. Others are saying, look, let's just walk a very fine line. I'll be really curious to see what he says, because this election, unlike 2020, the numbers are on his side. And again, we still have a lot of votes that need to be counted, so we don't know what the ultimate conclusion is going to be. But it's notable he's coming out in Harris.
Yeah, to be clear, in 2020, he declared victory. The race hadn't been called one way or the other. He hadn't lost yet. He lost 5 days later.
You've got some new information, Garrett?
Well, Lester, I just want to add that Trump was asked about this earlier today, and I think we have two things from him and from his campaign. First of all, his campaign has made it very clear that he would speak when they felt he was well on his way to 270 electoral votes. They were very clear that they didn't feel compelled to wait until the race had been called, but when they felt confident in his path, he would speak. And so I think that's what we're going to see now. Secondly, Trump was asked today what his message is going to be to the millions, tens of millions of people who will have voted for Kamala Harris if he speaks after a victory. Would he give a unifying message? Trump said that he would, but described this as a broken country and said it would be important to try to fix it. A unifying message has not been Trump's strength, candidly, across his political career. But he and his campaign are keenly aware of the expectations of this moment, especially if he speaks before the race is called. Lester.
All right, Garrett, thanks.
And stay with us. Our NBC News election coverage returns right after we take a quick break.
will win the state of Pennsylvania, and we can make that call, the 19 electoral votes. That puts him at 267, not officially over the 270, but the path that it takes to get to 270, he is well on his way to becoming the 47th president of the United States in what is going to be the biggest political phoenix from the ashes story that we have ever seen, ever. I mean, I'm going to say it's more than Grover Cleveland in 1892.
Cleveland was not the subject of a Russia investigation, 2 impeachments, 2 assassination attempts. They have indictments, 91 indictments, convictions, and there is almost nothing that hasn't been thrown at this former president. And his tenacity in wanting to go back and run again, which he announced immediately after he lost in 2020. This is a huge historic moment in the United States of America as the former President Trump is closing in with just a few electoral votes away now from clinching 270 as Pennsylvania is called for Donald Trump.
We're looking live, 1:21 a.m. in the morning at Trump headquarters. The cheers coming up. We're told the former president is there, as well as J.D. Vance, Senator J.D. Vance. They are getting ready to hear from former President Donald Trump. Again, at 267, not there yet, but looking at where that vote is in Wisconsin, where the vote is in Michigan, where the vote is in Nevada and in Arizona. There is no path, Brit Hume, for Vice President Harris, and just 30,000 feet. What this means.
Well, I'm old enough to remember when Richard Nixon was declared dead in 1962. Famous speaker.
Nevada, with its 6 electoral votes, too close to call, a 37,000 vote difference. Minnesota, it is Kamala Harris leading, but that is characterized by our decision desk as too close to call. 85,000 vote difference in Minnesota. Tom, we'll send it back over to you.
Yep, we're going to be looking at Arizona right now, the closest margin in 2020. At this hour, we have about 53% of the vote in. It's really tied up. It's pretty much 50-50 right now. Trump's slightly ahead by 16,000 votes, but it's still very early. Maricopa County, 60% of the vote. This is sort of, you want to win here to win the state. Harris is on top right now. We can compare her to 4 years ago, but again, half the vote is out in Maricopa County, but she's kind of where she wants to be. She's doing a little better in Pima County. Again, half the vote is out, but she's overperforming there than where Biden was 4 years ago. But when we go to the Trump counties, okay, places like Yuma, Trump is overperforming. 52% in 2020. Again, there's only 35% of the vote in, but he's at 64%. And we can actually, if we move the state over here, I'm going to pop over all the red counties, and you can see how he's overperforming. 68, now at La Paz, 71. We go a little further, Mojave, 75, he's at 76. We'll come over here to Navajo, 53, he's at 61 still. Half the votes out over there. Finally, 58 and 60%. So you can see, I want to show you an interesting stat, though. So remember where this race is right here, right? It's neck and neck. Let's go to the Senate race here, and it's a much different story. Look how much ahead Gallego is over Kari Lake right here. So you could have that split ticket voter effect in Arizona happening right now. Again, Gallego's at 52%, Kari Lake's at 46%. When we come back to the president's race, 50-49. So you can see what's happening there. We even heard Jen Psaki talking about this, right? There could be voters who, you know, the border's important to them, the economy's obviously important to them as well, and they could be picking Trump for the presidency, but Ruben Gallego for the Senate, guys.
I think the abortion ballot measure passed as well in Arizona. So, you know, voters aren't always sticking to the categories people want to put them in. Can we see the Nevada Senate race? So if Gallego gets the Democratic seat, that's a hold for the Democrats, and Jackie Rosen trying to go back to the Senate and hold that seat. How's it looking in Nevada?
Look, this is neck and neck right now, and Dems thought that they were going to have this, you know, this was a lean Democrat. They didn't think this was going to be a tough race for them. This is a little tough right now, but again, a lot of the vote is still out in Clark County. Let's see, we can see how compared to Biden. She's slightly underperforming Biden, but again, there's more than 20% of the vote out in Clark County. I don't want to make too much assumptions about Nevada without sort of a majority, all of Clark County in, or at least 90% in. In Washoe, which is more reflective of the entire state, neck and neck there. I would say, I think it's fair to say at this point with the vote where it is, Sam Brown is overperforming Jackie Rosen, of course, the incumbent here. Not great news for Democrats right now, but it's still a lot of the vote is out in Las Vegas, and that's what's going to really decide this election, Savannah.
Yeah, and we're waiting for the Montana Senate seat as well, where John Tester is looking to hold on. You can check in on that, report back. Oh, no, look, you're so fast on that board now. What do you say?
Tim Sheehy, look at this. The incumbent John Tester is down. This was the most expensive Senate race, I think maybe ever, in Montana here. This was a huge fight, and we only have about 30% in, so we can't really draw too much from here. But we can see how, this is a very red state. Trump was at 56. He's performing at 51 right now, so he's sort of underperforming. But look, it's still early in the night. There's still 70% of the vote that's out in Montana. But this is one we're going to be watching closer there's still a lot of counties that haven't even reported vote yet. So still very early in Montana, but the Republican, Tim Sheehy's on top.
All right, Tom, thanks very much. We're back with our panel now, along with our guests, Claire McCaskill, former Democratic Senator from Missouri, and Mark Lauder, Strategic Communications for the 2020 Trump campaign. Good to have you both here with us tonight. Claire, let me start with you. We may hear, Donald Trump sooner than later. What can he say that will make it a less bitter moment for those on the left?
Oh, boy, that's a really hard question. First of all, do I think he will? Will he try to reach out and be a unifier and try to acknowledge that this country is divided, incredibly divided? I don't think he will. That's not who he is. That's not how he got elected. And I don't know him. You could probably answer this better than I could, but it doesn't seem like to me that this would be the moment where he would not try to be his authentic self, which is I'm a marauder, I'm a disruptor, I'm somebody who I'm going to be your fighter against everything you hate about government. I think he'll stay with that kind of theme tonight.
Well, let me ask Mark, is that how he ran? I mean, has he, I'll stretch one more question further, has he made the process more coarse in general, the key to getting elected president?
Well, I think obviously he's got his own unique style, and he speaks in his language. But I also think, when we were talking about this earlier, I think Jim Messina was talking about it, that Democrats had made the decision to basically just campaign to be anti-Trump. And for the last 10 years, it's been primarily anti-Trump. I remember coming down the stairs with him as president-elect the first time in 2016, and I thought actually he gave a much more open speech to bringing the country together, because that was his first moment speaking as president-elect in 2016 in the wee hours over here at the Manhattan Hilton. And so it'll be interesting to see if he's going to hit on his campaign themes.
I mean, let's remember, we have seen him on the national stage for 8 years. I mean, I covered him in the White House. We covered him in the White House together. We covered him in the campaign. We know who this person is. He's been president before. He's been a presidential candidate before. And we know what his message tends to be. He's done it over and over in this campaign, and that is a message that is darker, that casts America as a dangerous place, a place that only he can fix. Somebody who, as we talk about rhetoric, just called Nancy Pelosi as crazy as a bedbug just recently, right? So let's just remember that is, I think, some of the tone. Now, we may see tonight him look to make I'm not even going to say the word pivot, but perhaps extend an olive branch. Maybe. I mean, listen, we're not, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do think there's a pattern of history.
To that point, I mean, remember after the horrific assassination attempt against him, the Republican National Convention, and all of the reporting, in fact, everything that he was saying was,
He himself said it.
He said it, yes. He said, I am going to deliver a unifying speech. And it was for part of the speech, but then it quickly became a very familiar, almost speech that you would hear on the campaign trail.
Well, that's what he ran for, and is perhaps going to prevail on that very way of being. I don't know that he would have any incentive to change unless, he had felt in the moment some magnanimity towards.
I will make one bold prediction, though, Savannah.
Yeah.
I predict that he won't say that anybody cheated.
Well, remember, though, even after he won election in 2016, he still made unfounded claims of voter fraud. So win or lose, it is something that he has a pattern of doing.
I remember in days after the 2016 election, he and his staff summoned network anchors, executives for an off-the-record meeting at Trump Tower, and it was off the record, so I won't go deeply into it, but to say we were under the impression it was going to be a reset meeting, it was not.
Well, and that, I think...
So you got chewed out?
You got chewed out.
Sounds like it. I'm like, I wasn't there.
Between the lines on that one.
Yeah, so we were kind of told what time it was.
Yeah.
Well, this, just to speak to that, I mean, again, we don't have to rehash all of it here, and we're still waiting for Pennsylvania to be called, but he is somebody who has called journalists the enemies of the people. Just at a rally recently, he talked about being surrounded by bulletproof glass, and that if somebody wanted to come after him in a attempted assassination again, they'd have to shoot through the media first, and he'd be okay with that. His campaign tried to suggest that's not what he said, but that is the kind of language that we have heard from him consistently.
And remember how he launched his campaign vowing retribution. And in recent weeks and days, we've heard him talk about his political rivals as being the enemy from within. His vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance, has spent a lot of time answering for that in interviews that he has done.
Well, just to bring everybody up to date, 1:30 on the East Coast, and we are awaiting Donald Trump, who's expected to speak at the Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida. Battlegrounds remain to be called, and so there still is a narrow path, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania for Kamala Harris. But the trend lines, and the reason you're hearing this tone from Democrats and Republicans alike, is the trend lines are indicating that it will be a Trump victory, but this has not been called yet. So you have the audience there waiting to hear from the former president. These are the uncalled battleground states. Those are the trend lines that we're talking about. Pennsylvania, a healthy Trump margin there with 94% of the vote in. Those states out west, Arizona and Nevada, we may not know about those for several hours now, and we are waiting. Wisconsin and Michigan kind of bringing up the rear there in terms of these Midwest, East Coast time zones. So we will continue to follow this, but Kamala Harris, I should mention, has gone home for the night. Cedric Richmond, who is the co-chair of the Harris campaign, came out and addressed the crowd at Howard University in Washington, D.C., letting them know that she would address them and address the country, he said, tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning. Well, it is Wednesday morning here on the East Coast, but in a few hours from now.
Yeah, and we should, it's worth noting in 2016, after his victory, he appeared in the 2 a.m. hour to make his remarks, and we are in the 1 a.m. hour, and we saw that motorcade a bit earlier crossing the bridge in West Palm. But we don't have any timing as to when we may hear.
Well, we know we won't hit traffic because of the hour and also the motorcade. But we are expecting him. And we've been talking about, you know, what tone he might strike. And also, I mean, Mark Lauder, you were there. You know him. If you, let's just pretend he listens to his advisors. What would you advise him to say tonight?
I would outline what we have to get done. And first off, we have 74 days, if I'm going off my quick math, before you actually take the oath of office. So I would obviously want to get right to work. You would obviously praise your staff. Unlike what you would normally do in a traditional speech this way, you will have not talked to your opponent unless something strange happens between now and then, and she calls, they reach out and call. So you're not going to be able to say anything along those lines. And then ultimately, I think, especially if it looks right now, you may not hold, but you're leading in the national popular vote. That's something that you have not done. It's something only one president, Republican president, has done this century. You have a mandate. And
what is the mandate? Because he didn't run to the center. I mean, he ran to the base, and the base, it seems poised to elect him. So what would the mandate be if you're him? What is it the mass deportation? Is it, the tariffs, for example? I mean, he's been very clear about his policies.
I think first and foremost, it'll be energy, the economy, extending the tax cuts, and then I think you will get into illegal immigration. I think you will get into in some of those other areas. But ultimately, I think that's first where you go. Also will depend on if you have the House. If you have the House and the House comes with you on this, then you have obviously both chambers. You'll have unified control. And that changes a lot.
He will effectively be a one-term president. What does that mean in terms of how he would govern?
You have, what, 8 months to get something done before they start running for re-election? No, I mean, in reality, obviously you're going to have your 4 years, but as we both know, you get that 100 days, maybe that 6 months before Congress goes and starts acting in their interests for their re-election, their campaign interests. You're going to have what I assume would be a primary to be your successor, and then obviously the Democrats will have their primary.
Claire, how would you see that? How would you see that rolling out?
Well, I think it depends on whether or not the House is controlled by the Democrats. Remember, when Trump got elected last time, he had the House and the Senate. He had all three, and there was, he struggled. He got the tax cuts done, but that was really the only, he didn't repeal Obamacare, he didn't build the wall, he didn't do a lot of the things he had promised to do, even though he had all three houses. So I worry that if the Democrats get the House, then whatever he doesn't get done will be Hakeem Jeffries' fault, as opposed to his inability to produce on the promises he's made. But if we don't take the House, then I think he's got a tall order, and I think he's got to do the tariffs. And he doesn't need Congress for that. He can do the tariffs right away. I've been hearing from my friends that are in Europe. They're very worried about the lines of those countries being redrawn fairly quickly.
You mean Ukraine?
Yes, and more. Orban and other autocrats that now will feel this is a green light. I think NATO will be greatly diminished. I think our European allies will be very, very nervous. So that's another whole piece of this. So I think it really is important for us to know whether the Democrats take the House before we start speculating too much. And part of me, I want the Democrats to take the House because I think there'll be a check. On the other hand, they also will be a scapegoat.
Well, let's be clear. If the Republicans hold on to the House, they have the Senate. If they win the White House, you have an ideological 6-3 Supreme Court. You will have the Republicans in charge of every branch of government in this country.
And not to raise this specter, but it is possible that if Donald Trump wins another term, if that happens, and we have not called Pennsylvania or the race yet, so big ifs here, but if that happens, you could maybe see some court retirements if there is a Republican Senate, Republican House, Republican in the White House as well, and then the court could become even more conservative. Again, potentially, I don't want to go too far down that road. Let's see how the night shakes out, but since you brought it up, Savannah, just to throw that in.
Well, that brings us to Tom Yamas and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
We've been talking so much about those collar counties. I want to talk about the I-222 corridor, and I know we have some PA homies in the house tonight. I'm sorry if my highway is not exact, but it kind of cuts through here. And I want to talk about this because when we look at the counties and how Trump's doing here, this is where the Hispanics are. This is the Latino corridor, if you will, in Pennsylvania, because I want to show you how important this is. So when we start, we can start right here. We'll start in York County, overperforming in York County. As we move up, Lancaster, about even there. We'll keep going. Berks County here, overperforming again, almost all the votes in there. We go to Lehigh now. She's underperforming. Harris is underperforming from Biden. Trump is overperforming. And we finish over here in Northampton, again, Easton, PA. Again, he flips this county, overperforming there. And then I want to show you the polls, guys, right? This was the exit poll that sort of, I don't want to say it surprised us, but this told us that the story was going to be different tonight. This is Trump support among Latino voters in Pennsylvania. Look at this number, 2020, 27%. In 2020, 24, 41%. It was just not Latino voters. And again, I know this could change. These are early exit polls. So look at the breakdown here. White, 55, 57. But even black voters, he grew his margins there from 2020 to 2024. And again, that Latino margin, that spread right there. And I bring this up because we were talking a lot about that Madison Square Garden rally, that joke that was made about Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans and how it would affect the race and how it would affect what happened in Pennsylvania. So far, we have not seen it have any tremendous effect. Again, we'll get all the data post-Thanksgiving, and we'll be able to sort of figure all that out. But right now, it looks like it's not affecting those Latino counties in Pennsylvania. I do want to get a check-in on how the collar counties are doing around Philadelphia. And we'll, again, Biden's number, where Trump is. This is statewide. We're going to start in Chester County. Harris is underperforming, still about 15% of the vote left out there. Montgomery County here, again, underperforming. We come down here to Delco. 62%, 61%, almost about the same. But again, if you want to win Pennsylvania, you have to be at the same mark as Biden or higher. And then Philadelphia right now, this is not a great number for her. This is pretty bad. Again, 15% of the vote, more than 15% of the vote, is still out there, so she could claw that back. And I don't want to forget Bucks County here. This is the big one tonight when we talk about the collar counties in Pennsylvania, because Democrats need to win this. They need to win all the collar counties. Biden at 51 in 2020. Tonight, Harris underwater at 48 and Trump up at 50. He may possibly flip Bucks County. 75% of the vote is in. Hallie Jackson's the Bucks County expert here, so I'll leave it to her.
No, correct me if I'm wrong. It was a Biden County in 2016 as well, right, by a slim margin.
It was Clinton County.
I'm sorry,
you're right.
I'm sorry, Democratic County, of course.
Yeah, but this is the only collar county. Yeah, Hallie, you're right. This is the only collar county Republicans thought they had a chance in, or could at least claw back some of the vote, maybe peel back some of the Democratic support. And tonight it looks like it's happened. We're still waiting on a quarter of the vote. But that's a strong, when you see a number like that in Bucks County, you know it's going to be a tough night for Democrats.
And as we talk about the education gap here in this race, I will just point out that Bucks County does have a bigger education gap than you see in some of those other Philadelphia suburban counties as well. You have an area like Lower Bucks, you see more of sort of that blue-collar voter there.
And the fact that Erie County also has gone for Trump, that's a huge bellwether in the state. And that's why Democrats who are texting me are saying all of these signs are just not headed in the right direction.
Well, I mean, Joe Biden, of course, picked up, he did better, in some of those rural places. He, is sort of from Scranton or Scranton adjacent, grew up there, but then obviously went on to have Delaware as his home state. But I mean, he did better in some of these rural places that we're talking about.
Well, what was interesting is that when Biden won it, when Obama won it, he drew out a very large African-American population and vote in the Philadelphia area. Yes, did well in the collar counties, but Biden really won it because of the collar counties, and that's what made his win in Pennsylvania so different.
Everyone's speechless here. I guess it really is 1:40 in the morning, except for they're not speechless. They're cheering there at Trump headquarters.
I think we can go
West
there.
Palm. Yeah, I think we must be getting close to that moment with Donald Trump. His motorcade, we saw it coming, so I think...
Garrett Hake's there.
Yeah, he's there. We can listen to him and hear what the crowd is hearing.
Yeah. Savannah, I can tell you right now, the anticipation far outpaces the available information about what Donald Trump will say and when he will say it. They're broadcasting another network in here, and we're getting a lot of cheers from a crowd who is anticipating a victory speech. I can tell you on the platform behind me, you probably can't quite see it, but the glass is up. The teleprompter glass is up for prepared remarks. But I think it's possible that part of the delay here may be that those remarks don't yet exist. Trump told reporters this morning after he voted that he hadn't written anything yet. He hadn't written a concession speech. He hadn't written a victory speech. He is something of a superstitious person, and it's possible he did not want to put anything on paper early, not knowing the results. For right now, I'm like tapping through my phone. We're reaching out to campaign sources, but I think part of the problem is Trump himself may not be entirely clear what message he wants to give to the country when he decides to step forward and give it. Savannah?
All right, Garrett, thank you. Let's go over to Peter Alexander at Harris headquarters, where they're shutting it down. Cedric Richmond had just came out a little earlier saying that we will not hear from Kamala Harris tonight, but we will tomorrow. Any further word there, Peter?
Right now at this hour,
Yeah, I think most accurate to say that we are shutting it down at this point, shy of 2 o'clock here. We're the only ones left, a matter of reporters here who are sort of bundling up their gear in anticipation of the vice president returning to Howard University, her alma mater, as we were told. I guess it's later today. She'll be speaking today, Wednesday, not just to her supporters, but to a national audience as well. Obviously, this thing isn't done yet, but certainly based on the expressions we saw, the information we're getting from those in and around the Harris campaign, it doesn't feel like a winning night for them, a successful campaign. We heard a funeral-type atmosphere from those top donors who were gathered at a hotel not far from here. Kamala Harris never arrived at this location, not dissimilar to Hillary Clinton back in 2016 when it was one of her aides who came out and said she wouldn't be speaking, that she would deliver remarks the next day. Ultimately, it was then when she delivered a concession. So they're keeping close eyes on Pennsylvania, but the bottom line is, there are key demographics and critical counties and crucial states where they're just underperforming.
Peter, I'll ask you to stand by right now. We have another call in Nebraska in the split electoral votes. NBC News projects that Donald Trump will win 4 of the 5. There's the difference. This is District 3. Donald Trump, the projected winner. And you can see 58% of the vote is in there.
And District 2 remains outstanding. That's the one in Omaha. adjacent district that usually goes blue and is expected to tonight as well. I think we await District 2. I think we just saw that.
And you can see Donald Trump drawing closer to the magic 270 that would put him over the top and hand him the White House once more.
Yeah, we await his comments. Stay with us. NBC News election night coverage continues right after this short break. Mornings are full of possibility and energy. And how you get set for the day ahead matters. It's about getting caught up and getting ahead, because every day deserves the best start.
Welcome back to NBC News election night coverage. It's nearly 2 a.m. in the East. We're looking at the scene in West Palm Beach, Florida, where supporters of former President Donald Trump are celebrating, early celebration. The race has not been called yet, but there is anticipation that the former president will speak here tonight, and so there is great excitement. Let me hand it over to Kristen Welker right now, who can talk about the other big headline of the night, and that's the balance of power.
Yeah, Lester, Republicans cheering for this as well, because NBC News has projected that Republicans will take control of the Senate after claiming 2 seats. Let's take a look at some of the races, though, that we're still watching. Let's start in Pennsylvania. Senator Bob Casey looking for his 4th term in the Senate. This race too close to call. His challenger is McCormick, and let's look. You can see right there, 51 to 41 so far. So there you have Senator Bob Casey trying to fend off a challenge from Dave McCormick. Let's go to Wisconsin now. Tammy Baldwin looking for another term in the Senate. She is getting a real run for her money from real estate and CEO executive Eric Hovde. Let's go over to Nevada now. Jackie Rosen. A couple of months ago, it looked like this was going to be safe for her. This race now too close to call. The White House having a Republican Senate undoubtedly would pave the way for him to clear at least part of his agenda potentially more easily. Now, of course, he might be dealing with the Democratic House.
And I'll tell you, the Republican, I just got a text from a source, Republican Senate source, they're feeling pretty darn good about tonight.
Well, we have a few seconds here. We await the appearance of Donald Trump in that hall in West Palm Beach, Florida. We see a celebratory atmosphere there. People, cheering and hugging, and it looks like a victory party. And when the former president